So let's kick things off with what are the main problems that you find when you are trying to recruit tech talent? And maybe if Scott, you could start.
Sure. Would you like me to talk about the ranges of people or just problems in general?
Yeah, maybe the range of people and the specific issues that keep cropping up.
The specific issues, right? Okay. I guess for people who are at the start of their careers, we often look for at least a base level of experience, and sometimes that can be difficult for people to do. There are lots of ways, and I'm sure we'll end up talking about them later, where people can build their own profile or portfolio, and lots of stuff they can do to start that. But typically the problems at the start tend to be around like the languages and frameworks that you've had exposure to, and that can be quite difficult because some people have high expectations of what you've managed to do very early on. I guess as you progress through to kind of people who've been around for a while and then seniors, it tends to be, I think problems we see tend to be people who've then only stuck with one thing or tend to have done one thing for a very long time and have perhaps not kept up with changing technology or aren't used to that kind of change, and they don't necessarily know how to approach it. So one of the things we often look for is people who have other things to compare it to and are used to change and who can describe differences between things and know how they'd move on. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. And maybe the same question to you, Amelia?
Yeah, I think the problems I found in attracting people into the various roles that we have in tech, for me, it's just more around the volume of roles that are now available. Like I reflect when I think back those kind of circa 20 years, and I was looking for my own job in tech in Manchester. I was trying to come away from London and there was hardly anything available. And it's always like really lights me up now to see how much opportunity there is in Manchester for people across all areas of tech and delivery to find a career. However, now I'm one of the people that has to recruit people in. That's kind of bittersweet because there's so much competition. Great for the candidates, hard for people in companies like we're all in. Kind of it is that war on talent. It's trying to find the right people and the best people to fit the roles that your company has available. I think the biggest challenge when we've got so many great companies, product companies and consultancies, I think it's really hard to really find your USP as an organization. I know we've got some great kind of brands on here today. It's how do you separate yourself out from the crowd? So I'm happy to open the conversation up to the rest of the panel if they feel the same and what they do in their companies. John, I don't know if you've got any ideas from Anne, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's I'd say it's similar to what Scott and you've just said, Amelia, actually. I remember when here we go. Right. Yeah. This is one reason.
I love it.
It is literally. I think from when I first started, for example, I think technology was very niche in terms of what it was, and there was this persona of what a technologist needs to be. Great at maths, really good at writing code. But I think what I've started to see now is, and especially not just at AND, but in previous places as well, that there's a diverse range now of just people, personalities, and strengths, and just life skills, all that kind of stuff. I think, and to what Scott said, actually, interestingly, I think a lot of organizations and a lot of product development places, they're solving pretty much one problem domain kind of thing, and that requires not one type of solution, but technology can sometimes be constrained, which constrains the developer's ability to grow. So what we find is in a consultancy, as I'm sure Amelia and Scott will understand, is we're working on a vast range of problems across a vast range of sectors, and there's finding a balance then, because sometimes, and it's understanding that when people come to look for a job, say, and sometimes we need to appreciate that the problem they've been applying skills to isn't necessarily relevant to what we need them for. So I think it's just because technology has just changed so fast, like it's just exploded. The demand is just crazy now, so it's competition, like Amelia said. But yeah, it's pretty much say tech and stuff like that. It changes so fast.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I guess, so Natalie, jumping on the back of that, do you, when you're looking to hire tech talent, do you look more for the technical skills that they have, or do you look more at kind of the softer skills that they have in terms of, can they kind of think critically, you know, all of those areas?
I think it's a really good question. And to John's point, you know, previously, you know, go back a decade or even more than a decade, and tech was very much a kind of back office, non-customer facing function within the business. Well, if you want to retain and, you know, keep your tech talent engaged, they really want to be front and center, hearing the customer problems. You know, that's what I'm really finding now at OAG. You know, the engineering teams want to be close to that. It helps them understand why we need to build something, what we need to build, and most importantly for those guys and girls, how they're going to build it. So to bring them up close to customers is really important. And that means that, yes, you know, soft skills are incredibly important as well, because engineering is becoming much more customer focused, working with us in product in the business. So I think that's a very real challenge, and it certainly plays a really important part in the interview process. Yes, we need to see the appropriate level, as Scott spoke about at the beginning, of the tech skills, but we really, really do focus on those soft skills as well. I think from a product perspective, it's equally as important, and I think challenges around that. Sometimes I'd love to hear from other product people if there are people on the call, but sometimes feel like I'm looking for unicorns in product. It's like, I need you to know the domain. I need you to be technical and have that, you know, competency and understanding. But I need you to also be able to manage stakeholders and the whole business really, really well. And to be able to launch the products cross-organizationally effectively. I need you to really care about data and metrics. I need you to really get under the skin of the customer use case and be able to, I need you to be able to translate that with tech. There's a lot there, and to find those candidates, I find really, really challenging. So I'd love to hear other people's views on that as well.
That's really interesting. I guess, like, let's move on to sort of what Amelia was saying around, actually now there are so many roles out there. You're finding you've got to almost, what do you guys do to make your company stand out and attract the best talent? Maybe if we start with you, Amelia.
Yeah, it's really key. I think something we do at Infinity Works, I think you have to have a really quick and efficient recruitment process. There's so much competition, and people and candidates will be talking to multiple companies at any one time. So it's, how do you make their introduction to you as a company and to your people, you know, as seamless as possible, as enjoyable as possible, but also so as efficient as possible. So when you find the right candidate, you can be giving that feedback and opening those offers up as quickly as possible. You know, like a number of great companies we have, again, we pride ourselves on our career development opportunities. Infinity Works is a great large consultancy, and with our recent integration into Accenture, it's almost limitless in terms of so many different directions you can take your career, whether that's quite a forward trajectory or you want to go and specialize in a certain area. There's just so many different avenues that are available to you. That's really attractive for people across all roles and across all different parts of their career. So yeah, and it's just, you know, the culture and the people are really great, and that really does shine through with the recruitment process as well. So it's a combination of those things, I think, give people a really good feel when they're introduced to you as a company, which helps entice them at that stage.
And John, is that something similar that you find, that it's kind of the culture and the mission that kind of attracts people, or is it kind of more of the, you know, the tangible salary, those kinds of things, which obviously has increased in the last, you know, year or two?
I think one thing I try and distinguish between and differentiate, actually, when we, first of all, it's what Amelia said, moving fast, because you know, when you get talent, like, it's not going to take long for that talent to move on. Our styles, if you think back to like traditional interviewing, especially for like an engineering job, a lot of it is, you know, you sit down, you have to do a technical task, and to be honest, it's looking at how good theoretically are at the technical problem. What we try to do in our interviews now is we want to give them a sense of what it would be like to work for so we try and replicate the real life environment. So we do the technical to some degree, but we try and just to see how they influence the interview as well, and actually interact with the different people in the room. And what if I'm interviewing personally, I'll bring different types of personalities into that room, and just to see like when there's conflict, for example, how they manage and kind of navigate those situations in consultancy. And this is one thing I always say to the potential hires as well, is if you're shifting from product to consultancy, you really are going to rely a lot on soft skills and behaviors, and just understanding people a bit more. And then obviously the technology side, we do like to sell ourselves and I'm sure you're all aware, like on our core values anyway, which is people first. Obviously, as a company grows rapidly, that's easy to lose sight. So there's a lot of stuff we do and, you know, around that to focus on personal growth. So we don't really do things like we go on competencies and things, but if someone comes in and they don't understand a certain concept of Java or AWS, or it's not like a deal breaker. We're kind of look at the person and look at what character they can bring and personality and stuff like that. But speed is definitely like the essence, I'd say, on that one.
Yeah, perfect. And Scott, is that the same thing that you kind of find?
Yeah, there's some good overlap there. I think the other thing that I like to do as well is I want them to meet as many people as I can get them in front of as quickly as possible, not for us, but for them. I want them to feel what it's going to be like, you know, to John's point, when they're working, but get the passion from the people who already work here. I think if those people are excited to work there, they're going to pass that on to the candidate. You know, I think that's really important. And then the other stuff we do is, you know, we're obviously a software engineering company first. You know, we try and show them the things that we've done and the things that we're responsible for. You know, like me, I've got a bookcase behind. You know, most of the techies have probably got books that have been written by thought workers, you know, and we do things like support people writing those books as well. But, you know, we want people who, I think to both John and Amelia's point, you know, bring something, you know, they've got a spark, they're here for the long term, you know, they want a career in software and technology, but they've got something else.
Yeah, amazing. And is that similar for you, Nessie, when you're looking for these unicorns? How do you get them? When you find one, how do you make them come and work for OAG?
Do you know, I love what Scott said, actually. I think honesty is so important. So, you know, you might not be fully agile yet. You might be in the middle of a huge transformation. It might be brutally fast-paced and hard every day, and you're trying to move the whole org with you. And I think it's really important to be honest about that up front, rather than, yes, we are really agile, you know, we are agile, we're not quite. Honesty is incredibly important. I'm totally with Scott on that spark, the energy, the growth mindset, that comes through in abundance, I think. And for me, it's always about will over skill. If you've got 80% will, energy, appetite to grow and learn, I'll take that. Because if you've got that, the 20%, which is the skill, you'll learn that if you've got the 80%. So I think that always really excites me. When I speak to School of Code candidates, that comes through in abundance. And I'm always hugely energized at the end of those interviews from speaking to those people. I also think it's really important, you know, most people are happy and engaged, motivated at work, particularly when we look at millennials now. People want to learn, they want to grow, and that has to be continuous. And you've got to offer channels and opportunities for people to do that. So you need communities of practice, you need chapters. People need to see that they're going to be able to keep learning. I'm 45 this year and I don't feel any differently. So I think it's in most of us, to be honest.
Love that. And so my next question is around what entry requirements do you guys look for in terms of juniors coming into your company? Does a degree matter? I know obviously, Nessie, you've hired from us before, so Bootcamps you've used previously, but what do you guys, maybe if we start with John this time, what do you kind of look for in terms of entry requirements?
I know it's a bit cliche, but, and you shouldn't do this, but I tend to not look at their qualifications anymore, because what I found is people who are good at research and academic knowledge lack the practical application of things thinking. Because I think what I've noticed in my career as well is sometimes, not always, there's a balance where they might get blindsided by theory and the correct theory rather than breaking the rules a little bit to get through problems. I tend to go to the back and see what they're interested in, like in terms of like hobbies.
Okay.
I know that sounds like something like you would do years ago, but I do because it gives me an idea of that person and how their strengths might play, kind of thing as well.
Yeah.
So no, I tend not to. What I tend to look at is once I've done that, I'll look at I'll have a read through some of their experiences. I tend to look for buzzwords and I'll challenge them on buzzwords just to see if they understand what that means in practice, and then get them to talk around the failings that they've done and like some of the biggest mistakes that they've done. I'm not too interested in how good they are at a certain tech, but rather how they've navigated a problem and how kind of thing. So I really look, unless it's for like, no, I don't actually. I don't look at qualifications. No, I don't.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And when you look at hobbies, which hobbies do you think actually, if they do these hobbies, that's going to be great for us? Like sports or?
Not necessarily sports either. You know, I think now, I think where we're at this day and age with all the lockdowns and stuff, obviously moving is a good thing for everyone. Actually, I'm not saying that people need to. I don't look for sport. I don't say an entry requirement. You've got to play rugby or football. I think it's just. It's not work. You've got interests and your things that you're passionate about. Reading. I can't read. I'm a rubbish reader. Like, I'm not great at writing. I've got these things, but I'm sport related. But it's the things I'm passionate about, and it's these things that you're passionate about that I know that you're not going to come to work and do 95% work and not have any life, kind of thing. So it's making sure I try and avoid work-life balance word, but there's balance between what you're passionate about and obviously what pays bills, kind of thing. So yeah, no, I don't look at qualifications. I look at what you do.
Yeah, I love that. And Scott, is that the same for you? Do you look at qualifications or?
Sometimes, obviously, we have a traditional graduate intake, but we also take from organisations like School of Code as well. We also look a lot at career changers, people who, I don't know, maybe they've got qualifications in completely unrelated areas, but want to move into technology. But also, like the route that I came through wasn't through traditional university. I went to university after. So, it does. I don't think it makes a difference. Similar to John, I think you have to, to get onto some of the other things that we were going to talk about. You have to go and look in different places. If you go to the same places to find people all the time. So if you choose, Oxford and Cambridge as easy targets. Yeah, and you only recruit from them every year, you'll have an organisation built of the same people.
Yeah, true. Amelia, what entry requirements do you guys have in terms of your recruitment?
Again, as a company, Infinity Works has kind of expanded to the ever-changing environment and the people that are available. So it's great. You definitely don't need a degree to come and work with us. Again, we use coding camps as routes in, which is great. We have our own kind of internal academy as well, which is a really nice, safe landing place for people coming in, especially in their kind of earlier entry years into tech, and that's across multiple roles, and that helps transition them into the company. So because we have that nice soft landing space, it just means you can be so much more open. I definitely didn't have that as a graduate, so I made lots of mistakes and I've got lots of learning curves. So it's great to see how organizations such as ours and others are changing to be open to more multiple routes in, opposed to that traditional to kind of degree route in. And also career changes, and other areas like that are entry routes in, and people who work for us have come in via those routes and have fantastic successful careers, which is great to see.
Amazing. And Nasa, you've obviously hired from School of Code before. Do you kind of look at other routes into yourselves, and what features and what things do you look for when you're hiring those individuals?
Yes, if I'll speak about myself personally. When I'm looking similarly to John, qualifications isn't where I go and look. I think what I'm more interested in is people's hunger. Like, can I see that you really want a career in tech? Can I see that you're really passionate about this? And actually talk to me about your life experience, because I'm really interested in the transferability of what's happened there, or in your job as a bakery manager with someone I spoke to recently, who we've recently hired as a product person in our team. That I'm really interested in. And I'm not interested in tell me everything you've done for the last 5 years, because you've done it. I'm really interested in tell me what you want to achieve in the next 5 years. What are you really passionate to learn and do? So I think that future focus is really important. Yes, we've used School of Code. On another level, partnering with unis is one option. But again, you know, similarly to John, it's not all about having a degree. I don't have a degree. I did A-levels and then went to become an accountant. That didn't last long and then ended up somewhere else. I've done apprenticeships before. And I think, you know, some of the smartest hires, the best hires who've rapidly kind of progressed in business that I've hired came straight after A-levels into the business. You know, they just had that passion and hunger and wanted to learn and get on. So, you know, very much in the same space as the others around creating that diversity and looking a bit more broadly as well.
Amazing. And so touching on the diversity subject, what do you guys do in order to kind of, first of all, is it important to you? And second of all, if it is, what do you do to kind of encourage a more diverse workforce and look for more diverse talent? Maybe if we start, Amelia, with you.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it starts with that initial kind of recruitment phase. Like we have diverse interview panels, and we try and make sure that people are meeting people that they can kind of relate to and have open. I think to Scott's point before, the more people you meet, and you can have open conversations with them about what it's actually like, because it is a discussion and it's a two-way discussion. So it's making sure that the whole interview process is as diverse and inclusive as possible. And a lot of what we do to attract talent is done with that D&I focus, so that any marketing or materials or events are always representative of the type of talent that we want to attract in. And then I think within any organization, but that's just one part of the process. If we're talking about a diverse and inclusive workforce, it's yes, start from the recruitment process, but it's making sure that when people are in, they feel, you know, welcome, secure, and that their careers are succeeding. And it's, you know, being honest with yourself at an organization, how you're achieving on all those things. And that's something a space I'm very active in, is just making sure, using data, looking at trends and seeing, are there areas you need to focus on or changes you need to implement to make sure you're making yourself as inclusive as possible in all areas of the organization.
Yeah, amazing. And Scott, for your company, are there things you do to kind of attract a more diverse workforce?
Yeah, I mean, we've always, you know, you go back to like when we first started, it was founded by one person who was a bit of a maverick, let's go with that. But believe really strongly in social justice and addressing inequality wherever he found it. You know, so we've always had that as a bit of a tenet. And to Amelia's point, you know, you have to make sure that when people arrive, they feel supported, they're in the right spaces. Yes, technology as an industry hasn't been great at women and underrepresented gender minorities, you know, but I'm sure as everyone here, we measure that at 41% now. We know that's not good enough, but we're all actively trying new routes to address that. And you have to work, you know, not just in that space, but also in areas of poverty or people who don't have opportunities. You know, you have to work there as well. It's not straightforward.
Yeah, amazing. And John, the same question to you, but do you look in different pools of people to try and attack the talent, or are you kind of just doing it via marketing, or that there are other ways that you try and attract different groups?
I guess from the hiring side of things, or the recruitment, we kind of widen our kind of entry doors, if so to speak, I guess, in terms of, to what Natalie said actually, around bakeries and stuff. So just by looking at the CVs and looking at the different backgrounds, you know, they have lots of life lessons that they can bring to problems.
Yeah.
And I think to Scott's point, I agree 110%. Like if you put, and there's a lot of things, you know, there's a lot of books out there, and there's a lot of psychology and stuff around echo chambers and all this stuff. Like if you have a problem and you put similar people on that problem, you're not going to end up with the same thing. Like, So one thing we encourage a lot is, and we do a lot of, when you join AND as well, we go through boot camps, and we do this like a bit of whole brain thinking, HBDI indexing, which is focuses on like your different areas of the brain. Like, and there's 4 specific things around like creativity and people and data and planning. And it's very rare that you get someone in all 4. But what we then tend to do is when we get certain engagements or certain clients, we understand what conflict can happen, because, you know, me and a colleague might be best of mates, like, but if he's a green and I'm a red, that, you know, they conflict. There's science that backs up the conflict. So it's about understanding that range of diversity in the teams that we build out. And a lot of that is driven by the problem. But from an hiring point of view, I guess it's about, if we've got a pile of similar CVs, I might just divide that by half and then try and get a few more in from different backgrounds, and do it that way. So it varies in terms of whole brain thinking, that kind of side of it, and obviously looking at life skills as well.
Yeah, nice. And Nasty, for OAG, what do you guys kind of focus on when it comes to diversity?
I think looking at alternative channels is something we're definitely getting better at in terms of creating that diversity in the recruitment pipeline. I think we focus a lot on really trying to remove the unconscious bias in the process. You know, you've heard me speak. I can get very excited about people who come from a background that's quite similar to me. And that shouldn't be at the cost of someone who does have a degree that comes from a very different background. So I think, Amelia described it really beautifully at the beginning. You've got to have a diverse panel at the beginning so you can actually challenge each other as well on your own biases that you might not even be seeing during that process. And I think the more that you can do that and make that robust, the better. And then, as Amelia said as well, it's about how do you keep those people engaged and how do you retain that talent in the business? And again, we're really trying to focus a lot on really getting under the skin of that with our employees and understand what that means for different groups within the business. We're certainly on a journey with that and, endeavouring to do more work in that space.
Amazing.
One of the hardest things to do, I think.
Yeah, it's hugely difficult. I think there's a load of work we can definitely kind of continue to do. And so that's come to the end of my questions, but if there's anybody on the stage or watching who has questions, please pop them in the chat and I will ask them as we go along. But it would be good to know, I guess, from each of you, 1 or 2 kind of top tips you have for when hiring tech talent that have really worked for you. So maybe if we start with Amelia.
Yeah, I think for anyone, and I think it's been mentioned a few times, is if when I'm hiring, I look for that potential. It's not the backstory of where you've been, like John was saying. So really, if you're a candidate in that position, do really focus on that forward view. You are where you are right now, and what's your energy, what's your drive, and trust me, interviewers will ultimately see that. And I know I've had some great career breaks in my time, even working at ThoughtWorks, they saw my potential. I hadn't come from an agile world, and there was loads of things I didn't tick off, but they saw the potential and the hunger in my eyes, and I kind of started my next career path as a result of that. So trust me, it's really noted.
Amazing. And John?
I'd say first impressions count, obviously, and I think when you're doing the interviewing as well, like I think a lot of the time, the person interviewing probably won't pass the interview. So I think lowering that bar so much that no one can get in, like raising that bar up, and like Amelia said, just look at that potential. Like I remember some interviews I had in my career. I walked out the door and I didn't want to work for him. Like, it just a horrendous experience because it felt so degrading because I couldn't answer the questions that they put in front of me, but I knew in practice it would have been totally different. But obviously the feedback at that point from the company wasn't experienced enough to sort that based on some context in an interview. So I think in terms of that diversity, it's that cognitive side as well, actually. Like, you're being interviewed essentially, is it? They're interviewing you. That's what I'd like. That's the way I look at it. So I try and portray a good image, and just build a bit of excitement around that experience. So when they leave, they want to come back, especially if there's competition as well, who are knocking on their door. So yeah.
I think that's really good advice. It's so two-way now. It's as much about them interviewing you as it is you interviewing them now. And Natalie?
I think for me, maybe expectation setting at the very beginning, which is, if you are good and if you are driven and if you do want to learn, I know that you're probably not going to be here in the current world in tech more than 2 years. So I know that, you know that. My commitment to you is that, we'll develop you as much as we can within that 2 years, and I'll help you move on to something else. But that's okay, because I've probably got a pipeline of people coming through from School of Code. So I think, we have to get in that mindset of this is reality, that the game now isn't, how do I make this person stay with me for 6 years?
Yeah.
They're probably not the right person, maybe. So that's kind of my thing. Set the expectation at the beginning. And then, you're kind of both navigating in the right way.
Amazing. And then Scott?
I think to both Amelia and Natalie's point, my first thing is passion. I want to see that somebody really wants to do it. But I love Natalie's honesty about, this isn't a long-term thing. It isn't anymore. We can't, but I think, Amelia and I used to work together, but there's still, people move on and they go and do different things. But it's about the where you went to get to where you are now, and then again, yes. Natalie says, where you're going to go. It's really exciting. I think as well, from a pure, just going back to like software engineering for 1 second. When I started, it was a predominantly solo activity.
Yeah,
you will be given something to do, and you go and sit in a corner or whatever, and you go and write code. It is not anymore. It's a team activity, not just with people who write code, but with product people, with BAs, with QAs, a lot more customer engagement, to John's point, than ever before. And you need all sorts of skills that come together, and you can't have people who just want to sit in a corner and basically not talk to people.
Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Very, very true. So we've got a question from someone in the audience. Considering the extreme shortage of people for the sheer number of jobs in the tech industry, do you think that the barrier of entry that companies are setting for a junior may be too high? The skills gap seems artificially created by companies, as the industry is fairly low risk by nature, and it wouldn't really pose much of a danger to take a less experienced people to get so many jobs filled.
Yep, possibly. I think that might well be the case because, if we agree to take people at a more junior level, it means we've got to make the investment in them. So, we've got to say, we've got to acknowledge that it's going to be 6 months before they're productive. We've got to have a whole induction program. We've got to start creating chapters and communities of practice. And, we've got to create a whole ecosystem to get these people up to the required level. So it's much easier for us as business people to say, this is with the level we need someone else do the work, and that might be the other person's employer, or they've gone to School of Code. But I think it's a really good point, and I think it's a valid one. Yeah. I don't know what the other guys think.
Yeah, I think to the point I mentioned about the bar, I think a lot of it is around, I don't know if it's the right word, it's not social security, it's like job security. I think there's a threat from within of their own employees, where I think sometimes I've worked with some amazing juniors, like really, really talented. Like I'm like, wow, like, and the thing is, you ask them questions, they've still yet to go on that journey. So how can you kind of raise that bar to that point? What we tend to do at And is we have competencies and things, but they're not gospel. They're a guide. So, for example, the bar for me is it moves relative to where I think they are in terms of passion, growth potential, and all this other stuff. So I do agree, actually. I do think, and what I'm seeing is, I think we are creating we're making it difficult, I think, for ourselves to hire, because we're too focused on the wrong things, I think. And it's who's the best developer from an engineering point, and I think it's the wrong attitude to have. And I think, if you raise that bar a bit, focus on growth. I know there's a question about retention. Retention, in my eyes, should be a secondary concern, actually, because if you're doing the right things, people won't consider leaving. I always say, like, money and pay should come last anyway. And I know it depends, but that's my take. I think we are thinking about it. We are lowering the bar ourselves, actually.
Yeah. Perfect. We'll move on to the next one. So this one is, for someone who decided to have a career change, what sort of soft skills do you look for that they can emphasize in a CV or resume?
I'll just add in a little bit to this one, because it's something I talk about a lot. Because when I was at Vodafone and I kind of managed the BA and the project management team that we had in the Manchester office, and a lot of people would come from the more operational teams and say, I'd love to work in your team, Amelia. And I would always set them this task and be like, oh, that's fantastic. So, you know, in theory, should an opportunity be available, I'm more than happy to bring people in from across the organisation, but go and find, you know, an online job spec for a junior business analyst, and I want you to map out, you tell me from your life experiences today which of those are transferable. You know, for a BA there is the kind of communication skills, there's an element of organization, there's the element of drive and delving into new industries and unknown areas, and that thirst for the unknown and being able to articulate and play that back and take people on a journey. Talk to me about where you've done that. I don't mind where you've done that. So it is that kind of like that skills mapping. So just talk to me about something in your general life, and then look at the kind of core skill set of the role you want to go into, and just talk about that. It doesn't have to be you've demonstrated that in that role, in that title. There's been a point in all of our careers where we didn't have that role in that title and we've had to transition into it.
Yeah, amazing. Are there any additional ones you guys could add? Maybe Scott?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Amelia said. But the other one I'd look for as well is problem solving. Can you demonstrate where you've solved a problem in an unusual way? Would be really good. You know, because a lot of the stuff that we get asked to build for companies, the reason they're reaching out is because they're struggling, right? And they're struggling because they're using the same thinking they've been using for years. And sometimes they just need somebody with a different perspective to come along and say, have you ever thought of just trying that and see if that worked? Oh, that'll never work. Have you ever tried it? No.
Yeah.
All right, okay. Well, maybe, you know, you think a bit differently. I once saw a guy who was in the Magic Circle who talked about problem solving, and he brought padlock with him and a key. And he showed you opening the lock, and then he gave it to somebody in the audience and he said, open the lock. And they couldn't open it. Like 3 or 4 people. He'd even stand with them and he'd do it, and then it'd open, and they'd do it, and they couldn't open it. And what it took was a fresh perspective. He said, you know, when you turn a key, your wrist can only turn this much. You ever thought of turning the lock? You can turn the lock a lot further, and it eventually unlock the thing. But you know, sometimes it takes some ingenious things to change the norm.
Definitely.
So if you do any of that, you're going to stand out.
Goes back to what John was saying about having people think in different ways, and you need that, otherwise you get the same answer to the same problem at time and time again. So we've got another question here. So what do you think are some of the best questions a candidate can ask so that they can get an idea if they will be a good fit for the role or company? It can be tough being new into the industry, looking at a job description, having a clear idea of what the company or position might actually be like.
Can I jump in with this? Sorry, I know there's something in there for me around, I always ask, this is something I ask, like, tell me, you know, when you're speaking to someone who's in that role or has that experience, tell me a day in the life, tell me a week in the life. And you can really just try and get a visualization, which is important for me, of where's my time going, who am I talking to? And then it's quite a basic one, but tell me the 3 best things about that role or that company, and tell me the 3 biggest challenges, you know. And people tend to be quite honest because it is a 2-way conversation. You want all candidates coming in eyes wide open, but I seem to think that they're quite sensible. They're not too offensive questions, but you do get a good feel for what you're after.
Amazing. Do you have anything to add, maybe, John?
Oh, it's an hard one, that. I think at the end of the day, I think it should always, and this sounds selfish, but it should always be about yourself, us. Like you all have values and you all have goals that you want to achieve in your career. I think when you're looking for a potential job, I think obviously it needs to be right for you, but also make sure you understand what your core values are, because if you've got core values and that potential company doesn't satisfy those values, you're not going to match and you're not going to enjoy the time. It's going to be a bad experience. So I tend to, when I interview, I try and relax everything so that they're open and ask me as much as I ask them. Although I don't think there's one question actually. I think it depends on the situation personally, but make sure you know what your personal values are, and make sure that they're aligned.
Killer question, I think, for anyone is, what happens in this company when something goes wrong?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good telltale one on the culture. What happens when something goes really, really wrong or a really big mistake is made? And that will tell you quite a lot about what you need to know about the organizational culture.
Sorry, go on, Scott.
I was just going to say, similar to Amelia, I like Amelia's question, but the other one I would ask, if somebody was asked me what keeps you at that company, I think that's quite a good one. And to people will therefore, to Amelia's point, be very honest and very open. It's quite a disarming question. Sorry, go on, John.
They're the best one.
Now, I was just going to say questions not to ask. Salary. How much will you pay me? That kind of thing. Focus on the points. Obviously, it's important, but time.
Perfect.
Unless it's important to you.
So someone said, I've been looking for a job in tech for about 5 weeks now, and most of their applications aren't being opened. What's the best tips you have for sort of staying motivated, focused, and engaged whilst you're looking for a role?
I think, if I was at the start, again, going back to, if I was at the start of my career, I'd be thinking about the type of companies that I would really like to work for or with, look at what they do, and why not just try expanding your portfolio of little things that you've built yourself, little web pages or ideas or bits of code or ideas for a product, or thinking about future direction of stuff, but do it with respect to where you want to get hired. Because you will very quickly decide whether you still want to work for that organization, but also you've got something you're excited about and you can show them when you do. Get in front of them, but don't give up.
Yeah, I would just say to this, it's almost that element of, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So maybe there's something in there about trying some different channels, like to the story I was sharing about the opportunity when I worked for ThoughtWorks. I was out of work and I was kind of on maternity leave because I'd taken a redundancy from Vodafone. Then I had this maternity leave, and then I was kind of really low confidence when I was coming back into the job market. I knew I wanted to work for ThoughtWorks, but I didn't know if that opportunity would be available to me. But I started going to events and I started taking my CV, which is a little bit old school. It is 6 years ago now. But do you know what I mean? I did the hard things, but I tried different.
Yeah, while Amelia's frozen, she did go to events, but she went and talked to people, just walked up to people, and start talking to them, because everyone's there because they're interested. Yeah. Sorry, Amelia, I filled in while you froze.
Oh, yeah, I think it's because I've plugged my power in. That's why I moved. But just maybe try different routes is the bottom line, and do the hard things. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. Start a conversation. As awkward as these things are, that is the difference, and that will set you apart. So just look at other channels.
And I think we live in a more digital age now. I remember when I first left college, uni actually, it was exactly this, because I remember at the time there were no work experience, wasn't a thing, but I remember local to where I lived, there was a web design shop, and I walked into this web design shop and I asked them to tell me what it's like to be a web designer, so show me about some of the things. I remember my mate saying, "Are you mad? Like going in, just walking in there asking for some books?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm inquisitive. I want to know what it's like if I'm going to invest my time in uni when I'm struggling to get in uni." So I went in and asked them, and they showed me around, and I looked at the people as well and how stressed they look at the back in the days. But yeah, I remember walking in the shop. It's still there, like a little web design shop. It was. There were 4 PCs, and I looked and I thought, "Yeah, is this what I want to do?" But it was, and then obviously I carried on. Times have changed now. There's a lot more online resource and stuff like that. But I think to what Amelia said, reach out and just be inquisitive, and ask about, look at what you can do the hard, like Amelia said, do the hard work up front.
There's a really good set of resources now as well. You get them for all areas. Like there's 30 days of code as well. So you know, and they have it for other disciplines as well. But you know, you actually build things and you build something new every single day. And I think something like that keeps you going.
Yeah.
Keeps you engaged, keeps you learning. And you will, in those forums, people post, how does this work? Or is anybody stuck on this one?
Yeah.
You can easily make other connections with other people.
Yeah.
Love it. So another question here. So what tools or techniques are there in place to help teams work more effectively together, especially when they're taking on a newcomer who may not be in a similar footing as the other team members? Maybe Natalie?
So, I mean, Slack, Teams. I know I'm the chief product officer of my team, but we have a team and we're all on it every single day. The new starters are on it from day one. You know, no question is a stupid question. You need help, you ask for help. To ask for help is a good thing. We probably get like 200, 250 messages on that chat every day, but I think there's no other way to do it now. You know, for you in business working with your team or for new people coming on board, it's about not waiting to a one-to-one to ask the question. You know, ask it now. If you need help now, ask it. And actually, you know, we're all set up to support that. This is the way we work now. So that would be my answer to that question.
Perfect. So then next one, how much weighting do you give to personal projects over, say, if you're hiring a bootcamp experience when hiring a junior developer? So.
I don't. I think they're both really important. And it's same thing, you know, if you've got a personal project, like, I don't know, you play volleyball and you've written a volleyball scoring app, you are going to be passionate about that. That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. I think, you know, but going through the other route helps you develop some of those things anyway. Yeah, and gives you something that's perhaps, you know, sometimes you might choose something very niche, and something like that can give you a bit more choice. But I think both the same.
Yeah, and I think contrary to that actually as well, there's a balance where if they spend half their life doing personal projects, there's a balance there between how much of the soft side, how many soft skills are they missing if they're investing all the time in the personal project. Yes, personal projects are great, but sometimes those are based around unrealistic scenarios, perhaps. Definitely agree with Scott though. I think they're both as important as each other, but just as important as that is the balance between doing that and focusing on your soft skills as well.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. So next one, from my experience, most of the interviews for software developer jobs are based on algorithms and problem solving, which could be a big barrier for a junior. In your opinion, what are the minimal technical skills that a junior should have? So maybe if we start with Natalie.
Maybe we start with Scott or John.
Scott, John.
Go on, I'll go first. Then you can do a bit as well. So, yeah, inevitably, you know, I think sometimes for like software development stuff, yes, there's some element of algorithms and stuff, but we don't test people on algorithms. We don't say, sit down and write me a sort or something like that. What we want to do is see that people can think through problems. You know, I don't know, here's an autonomous vehicle. It can only move in these directions. How do you make it do this? That isn't about, you know, understanding how sorting works or memory allocation or stuff like that. But it's, can you go through that process, like logically, where would you start? Where would you start is always a great question. What's your first thing you're going to do? Right, what do you do next? You know, and that's kind of progression to get in there. So I don't think, you know, don't always think that all companies are going to make you sit and write real code. They might make you write a little bit of pseudocode, or even better, sit with somebody like John. You know, if it was me being interviewed by John, we might sit there and do something together. That would be even better.
Yeah,
Go on, John.
I agree. I think we don't interview on algorithms either. I think it's very rare, and I look at I can't do algorithms. I'm not great at writing algorithms, but I'd also challenge anyone trying to in a job where we're not trying to solve. You know, it's been done. Like, unless we're trying to improve performance by nanosecond or something, Like half the majority of frameworks will do all the sorting things we need. What is important behind the algorithm thing, though, is breaking that down into a smaller set of problems. So taking a big problem and breaking it down into smaller pieces. For me, it's understanding how you break that down. So one technique I do with the guys a lot in interviews is I'll start with a really ambiguous requirement. So in my head, I'm thinking, right, you've got ambiguity in front of you. Get clarity on that now and come up with a sequence of steps, because ambiguity is a real problem in the open world. Requirements are probably non-existent. You know, there's a lot of talk about TDD and testing and all this stuff. In practice, without getting into TDD, there's a lot of ambiguity in requirements that would, you know, it'd end up in a position where the testing all right. So in that sense, rather than algorithms, it's focusing on breaking down a problem and mentally, like, what is your mental model kind of thing in terms of that. So yeah, and I can't do algorithms, and it's so far so good. I'm progressing. So
perfect. So we run over time a little bit, but I'll just ask one final question before we wrap up and move over into the networking. I think this is quite a nice one because it kind of will give people kind of use case of how it actually works. So this person's asked, coming from a hospitality background, pursuing a career in tech, but they're finding it quite hard to build their CV and make it relevant to the tech industry. Is the bootcamp enough to be considered for an opportunity? But actually, maybe more so, what from a hospitality background could they highlight that would be a transferable skill that you guys would be interested in?
I'll shoot if you like. I think really don't worry about, you know, easy for me to say, look, I hired someone who works in a bakery, as I said a few weeks ago, who is spectacular. I would imagine in hospitality, you have to sometimes deal with difficult customers. By the way, in business, they're called stakeholders, but it's quite similar. So being able to deal with people, being able to understand people's needs and requirements, being able to, you know, meet those, doing that under pressure. I would imagine working in hospitality is quite a pressurized environment. Often, you know, when I'm staying in restaurants or if you're in hotels, you know, people are running around all over the place. It's the same in business. We are working at 150 miles per hour most days while, you know, running with 10 different trays and spinning 20 different plates. So much commonality I would see between those industries. So really emphasize that, really kind of build that up and think about, again, the transferability between your life experience that John was talking about and, you know, how that compares to a corporate business. There's so much commonality. Whoever asked that question, I'm very happy to have a, you know, a catch up in the network or a further discussion with you on that. So big up all your experience and don't focus on what you don't have from a tech experience perspective would be my advice.
And I have 2 words: conflict resolution.
Amazing.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks, guys. I want to just say a massive thank you, Natalie, Scott, John, and Amelia, for being a part of our panel today. I think the event organizer is going to just pop in a link to Kumo Space where we'll be moving over. So if you want to network or if there's any other questions you want to ask us, we'll be over on the Kumo Space. But thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. It's been a really great session.
Yeah.
Pleasure. Thanks.